Something historic just happened. For the first time in decades, the Supreme Court has delivered a 6-3 decision that could permanently reshape how concealed carry works across America. If you own a firearm, if you believe the Constitution still means what it says, if you've ever waited, paid, or begged for a carry permit, this ruling changes everything. Because this wasn't just another opinion from the court. It was a thunderclap, a signal to every state in the nation that the Second Amendment is not a privilege, it's a protected right. Welcome to Constitutional Briefing. No spin, no politics, just the truth about how this new Supreme Court ruling will impact you. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because what comes next is going to reshape the map for every law-abiding American gun owner. It began quietly with one case. A single challenge against a state's restrictive carry permit law. But when the Supreme Court released its opinion, the courtroom gasped. 6 justices in favor, 3 against. And with that, the landscape of the Second Amendment shifted forever. The ruling declared, in no uncertain terms, that the right to bear arms extends beyond the threshold of your front door. You don't have to prove you're worthy. You don't need to explain a good cause. You don't need permission to exercise what's already yours by birthright. This 6-3 majority wasn't hesitant. It was deliberate, asserting that any law which forces citizens to justify their need to carry is unconstitutional. The justices made one thing clear. The Constitution doesn't bend for bureaucracy. To understand why this ruling matters, we need to go back more than a century. After the Civil War, states began crafting permit systems not to enhance safety, but to control who could legally carry. The Sullivan Act of 1911, for example, was designed to keep firearms out of the hands of immigrants and working-class Americans. These early good cause laws were built on discrimination and control, not on constitutional principle. Over the years, those same ideas spread like wildfire. By the late 20th century, dozens of states had laws that forced citizens to prove a special need before being granted a permit. Judges sided with bureaucrats, not the Bill of Rights. But today, that era is over. Because this Supreme Court ruling doesn't just question those systems, it dismantles them. It tells every lower court, you cannot bury a right under red tape. This wasn't the court's first word on the Second Amendment, but it's the most decisive one since Bruin, 2022. In Bruin, the court ruled that any gun law must be consistent with America's text, history, and tradition. No more balancing tests. No more emotional arguments about public safety. Now, this 6-3 decision goes even further. It takes the Bruin principle and sharpens it into a legal blade. If a restriction didn't exist in 1791 or can't be traced to our founding tradition, then it has no place in American law today. That's the power of this ruling. It doesn't just protect your right to carry. It forces every court to use the same standard, closing the loopholes that anti-gun judges have relied on for decades. Within hours of the decision, states across the nation went into crisis mode. California rushed to rewrite its carry laws. New York passed emergency legislation redefining sensitive places, making almost entire cities off-limits. New Jersey added insurance requirements and training mandates that many say to violate this new ruling outright. But across the South and Midwest, a very different story unfolded. Texas, Florida, and Georgia pointed to the ruling as justification for expanding constitutional carry, no permits, not delays, no excuses. Gun rights groups immediately went to work. Dozens of lawsuits were filed within 48 hours, challenging state-level restrictions, using this new Supreme Court precedent as the foundation. a legal earthquake now rumbling through every circuit court in America for decades. States operated under two systems, shall issue and may issue. In shall issue states, citizens could get permits if they met certain requirements. But in may issue states, bureaucrats had discretion to deny you even if you met every legal standard. That system is now dead. The Supreme Court's message was direct. The government cannot pick and choose who gets to exercise a constitutional right. The Second Amendment belongs to the people, not the politicians. The court's opinion introduced a clear framework, 3 words that now define every future case on gun rights. Text, history, tradition. Text. What does the Constitution actually say? History. Was there a comparable law in 1791 or 1868? Tradition. Has this restriction been consistently upheld across American history? If the answer to any of those is no, then the modern law fails. Gone are the days when states could justify limits based on public safety or modern needs. The justices drew a constitutional line in stone. No more balancing your rights against government convenience. So, what does this mean for you right now? Permits. States that once required good cause are already rewriting or eliminating those rules. Travel. More states will now be required to honor out-of-state permits. Traffic stops. Simply carrying legally can no longer be treated as suspicious. Self-defense. If you act within the law, the courts are now bound to view your actions through the lens of constitutional protection. This is the difference between hoping the law is on your side and knowing it is. For the first time in generations, lawful gun owners have the upper hand. The right to bear arms has been elevated to its rightful status equal to freedom of speech, religion, and due process. Of course, not everyone is celebrating. Within hours of the ruling, members of Congress were already planning countermeasures. Senators Schumer, Murphy, and others vowed to fight back, drafting new legislation disguised as public safety acts. Blue states began introducing carry exclusion zones that stretch across entire neighborhoods. Some even proposed taxes and insurance mandates for lawful carriers' attempts to undermine the ruling without openly defying. But here's the truth. None of these tactics have a basis in American history. And under this new ruling, that means they won't survive long in court. This is no longer just a policy debate. It's a constitutional showdown between states that believe in the Bill of Rights and those that believe they can rewrite it. What comes next is unprecedented, because this 6-3 decision doesn't just affect permits. It sets the stage for every major Second Amendment case moving forward. Already, lawsuits are targeting assault weapon bans in multiple states, magazine capacity limits, waiting periods, sensitive place, laws that try to ban carry nearly everywhere, training mandates that act as financial barriers to gun ownership. One by one, these laws are falling. Federal judges are now forced to apply the new text, history, and tradition, and most of these modern restrictions simply can't meet that burden. This is the domino effect the court unleashed, a chain reaction restoring constitutional law, one case at a time. Every generation faces a moment when the meaning of liberty is tested. For the Second Amendment, this is that moment. Because this ruling doesn't just restore the right to carry, it restores balance between citizens and the state. It reaffirms that rights do not require permission slips. It tells politicians, the Constitution isn't optional. It tells judges, your duty is to protect liberty, not regulate it. And it tells every American gun owner, you are no longer standing on shifting ground. You are standing on the solid foundation of constitutional law. So here's where we stand. The Supreme Court has spoken 6-3. Firm, clear, uncompromising. States are panicking, rewriting, and resisting, but the law is now on your side. Every citizen has the right to bear arms without arbitrary permission, delay, or bias. But the fight isn't over, because when freedom wins a round, the system always tries to strike back. So stay sharp, stay informed, and stay in the fight. This is Constitutional Briefing, not politics, not spin, just the raw truth about the battles shaping your rights. If you found this video helpful, like, subscribe, and share it with every gun owner you know, because the more we spread the truth, the harder it becomes for anyone, Congress, governor, or bureaucrat, to erode your freedoms in the dark. Stay free, stay lawful, and always stay aware.